Geht's schon los?
So, wir sind jetzt scharf.
Oh,
das ist schön.
Das ist schön. Ja, wir haben uns ja eigentlich gerade schon fast ein bisschen kennengelernt. Herzlich willkommen nochmal, ganz offiziell. Wir freuen uns sehr. Wir sind zwar ein bisschen weniger als gedacht. Nee. Ich switch mal meine Position hier für den Stream. Genau, also daher ganz, ganz herzlich willkommen bei uns, bei der ZDI, und wie gesagt, wir freuen uns, dass wir heute sozusagen ein bisschen gemischt sind, also nicht reines DevOps-Thema. Das ist für mich als Fachfremde ganz gut, weil ich nämlich nicht aus dem DevOps-Bereich bin, sondern aus dem Community Relations, worunter Recruiting und Hochschulmarketing gehört. Deswegen ist es so, dass ich auch nur die Moderatorenrolle heute einnehme und wir aber Experten haben, die sich genau mit dem Thema DevOps versus Agile beschäftigen, und ihr habt uns ja auch ganz viele Fragen reingegeben, was sehr schön ist, die wir dann auch heute durchgehen. Und ich würde aber sagen, dass wir vielleicht so starten, dass erstmal ganz kurz sich unsere Experten selber vorstellen, und dann können wir ja einfach zusammen in die Fragerunde gehen. Und auch wenn ihr keine Frage reingegeben habt und irgendwie bei der Diskussionsrunde was aber habt, wo ihr gerne Anmerkungen geben wollt, würden wir, nachdem unsere Experten sich offensichtlich nicht zerfleischt haben, dann trotzdem, dass ihr einfach eure Fragen stellen könnt, mitten rein. Ne? Gut, dann würde ich einfach mal hier beim Stefan anfangen.
Ja, gerne, danke. Ja, mein Name ist Stefan Göbrich. Ich bin freiberuflicher Agile Coach, Scrum Master, ich bin Kammertrainer für die Kammer University. Sehe ganz viele Firmen und ihre möglichen und unmöglichen Prozesse von innen. Daniel hat gesagt, hast du Lust auf eine Podiumsdiskussion? Da habe ich gesagt, gibt es Schnittchen? Dann hat er gesagt, ja. Dann habe ich gesagt, klar, dann bin ich auch dabei. Severin.
Super, danke. Ja, ich bin Severin. Ich habe meine Laufbahn hat ein bisschen anders gestartet. Ich bin eigentlich Softwareentwickler und habe das einige Jahre gemacht. Fullstack, sowohl Frontend als auch Backend, und bin dann so ein bisschen reingeschlittert in diese Scrum Master, Product Owner Geschichte und Agile Coach Thematik, und habe das dann jetzt die letzten 7 bis 8 Jahre gemacht. Das heißt, wir teilen quasi jetzt ein Bötchen, nachdem ich die Seite gewechselt habe.
So, mein allerseits Christian Harlas. Ich arbeite hier in dieser Firma. Bin eigentlich im Grunde die meiste Zeit von meiner Karriere Entwickler gewesen und hatte angefangen bei ziemlich klassischen Projekten, also auch Wasserfall, und dann langsam immer mehr agile Projekte, aber eben als Entwickler kenne ich da so beide Seiten, und das wird heute Abend so bestimmt mein Blickwinkel sein.
Danke. Daniel? Ich vertrete heute mal wahrscheinlich den größten DevOps-Teil. Also als ich angefangen habe, in meiner Karriere irgendwie Fuß zu fassen, da bin ich ganz schnell Alleinadministrator gewesen und musste mir irgendwie helfen. Und seit mittlerweile 12 Jahren hat sich dieses DevOps-Pattern sowohl kulturell, also das heißt, was man so darüber liest, weiterentwickelt, als auch ich halt in dieser Kultur mich weiterentwickelt. Und bin gespannt, was wir da heute hier irgendwie für lustige Fragen haben und wo sich da
Ich habe eure Fragen ja hier alle bekommen, und wie gesagt, falls da noch was aufkommt, jederzeit gern. Ich habe es auch versucht, in eine Reihenfolge zu bringen, habe gemerkt, dass ich einfach keine DevOpslerin bin und auch keine Agilistin in dem Sinne. Ich kriege zwar viel mit immer durch euch alle und ich lerne kontinuierlich, aber tatsächlich ist es mir nicht gelungen. Und deswegen haben wir vorhin gesagt, bevor es losging, wir machen jetzt pädagogisch wertvoll, dass jemand hier entsprechend zieht. Ja, ich habe Wirtschaftspädagogik studiert, dementsprechend macht es mir besonders viel Spaß jetzt. Genau, irgendjemand zieht von euch und kann die Frage vorlesen, und dann geht's los, würde ich sagen. Gut, dann, ich nehme dich. Genau, zieh mal. You can also read it in English, it's also written in English. And just read it out loud. Just read it out loud what is written there, so that they can start discussing.
Ah, okay. Which of the two methods makes more sense? When?
more sense.
Und go.
For me it's pretty clear. So since DevOps for me is a superset of very different methods and tools, it makes more sense to do DevOps only. All the other stuff is just some mini pinpoints in there, in the DevOps culture itself.
By methods, what do you mean there? Like Agile versus Waterfall, or is it that?
Or DevOps, or Kanban or Scrum or...
Well, DevOps has nothing to do with Agile and with Scrum and with anything else. DevOps is a technique you can apply everywhere.
Okay.
And the other thing, waterfall versus Agile, I hate them both in a way. I mean, my old project, Waterfall, they were a pain because well, all the testing happened at the end, was a pain. And some Agile projects which I know, they completely forget that Agile also requires at least some planning and some architecture and some high-level code.
Okay, you just said that the two methods in terms of DevOps and Agile have nothing to do with each other?
You can apply DevOps to any kind of process.
Okay.
Agile is like a development process. What is it? Development process or project process? What's the best word?
Well, yeah, I would consider it to be a project management kind of thing. So you organize the features, the stories with the stakeholder, try to figure out what the customer wants, try to figure out what the stakeholder wants, and then develop a timeline and develop something in a cycle that is repeatedly shown to the customer, and then they either give you thumbs up, thumbs down, or tell you, well, you can change that. That is what I would consider the Agile methodology. Obviously, there is a multitude of variants in there in terms of you can do Scrum, you can do Kanban, you can do other methodologies as well that all would kind of fall in that kind of territory. And DevOps is something that is additionally to Agile in the way that you, for example, if you deliver something to a customer, you don't want to roll out everything at once to 10,000s of people. Maybe you just want to have something with a beta flag and just have a small sample size of 1% of the users that want to test something that would fall into the DevOps territory. Or maybe you want metrics, or maybe you want to deliver something faster, or maybe you want to deliver something continuously that is stable enough. And this is something that wouldn't fall into the Agile methodology, at least for me. But okay, that clarifies things.
I want to disagree with the continuous delivery, continuous integration approach. It can be part of the DevOps culture, but there is no need for it. So you don't need to continuously deliver something to apply DevOps to something.
No, that is correct. Yeah, that is correct.
But you can also do Agile with continuous delivery, as far as I understand.
Correct, yeah. So,
I don't know what to think of this question. So these are completely different things. So Agile is what is defined or manifested in the Agile Manifesto. Like we have teams which are able to continuously deliver value to the customer and certain principles and so on. And there's frameworks which implement the Agile Manifesto in a way like Scrum, which tells us, okay, we have cycles, we call them sprints, and within these things we implement value and deliver them to the customer. And then we have Kanban, which is not an Agile method, which is some So Scrum tells us, okay, we do these cycles and we do improvement, but Scrum doesn't tell us how to improve. And Kanban is an improvement method, so we can use both. We can use Scrum with Kanban. And DevOps, if we go back to the beginning and the meaning of DevOps, is development and operations. So in classical organizations, you have a split between developers and you have a split between an operations team, which operates the service nowadays in the cloud, back then on some backend service mainframes whatsoever. And if you want to improve your value stream or your development process in a way that you're able to deliver faster to the customer, it makes sense to stretch your value stream until the border where your customer sits. So that one team or one, I don't know, unit, whatever framework you use, is able to do exactly this, to develop it, to deploy it, and to maintain it. And if something goes wrong, they can start the development of a patch, and so on. So it's Scrum, Kanban, DevOps are three things which operate very well together, but it's horribly hard to do all of them
Yeah, and for me it's also, so you can apply, for example, Scrum to a team without knowing anything about real agile development processes in itself. Yeah? You're just living the rituals, you're getting used to it, and you can mature with the same. It's, for me, in DevOps it's different because there is no, as you stated, there is no real plan how to do DevOps properly. There are a couple of principles and a couple of ideals, and you have to stick to them or try to achieve them. But there is no do Scrum and you do DevOps, or do Kubernetes and you do DevOps. So that's not true.
Yeah, but I think with that they have to differentiate between the level that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So talking about DevOps is like talking about Agile.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And talking about Kubernetes is like talking about Scrum, though both are implementations of principles or of higher level principles.
Exactly. Exactly. And since you stated here, Kanban is continuous improvement, or an improvement method, to be precise. For me, this is exactly where DevOps can shine, because you can take, for example, Kanban and improving something and make it together with DevOps. So you can perfectly operate systems with Kanban without applying any agile methodology to your environment, because Kanban is not agile in its nature. You can do DevOps without doing agile.
Do you think that combining Agile and DevOps is possible in a similar way that it is with Kanban and DevOps?
Indeed,
Okay, good.
I think so. But there are differences, and you have to do your own homework.
Yeah, that's
As far as I understand.
Okay, I would look here to all of you. Do you would like to add something? You would like to agree, disagree? Okay, we'll start with you.
So maybe I will add something, because I already read in one book about DevOps that there is no conflict between Agile and DevOps. So you can use both, because DevOps is like the way of working between developers and operation, like you mentioned. And Agile, this is something like you would like to agree with your customer about what you deliver in, and then you get feedback, and then you do it again. So like you mentioned also the stream value. So I don't see like a conflict or like a difficulty to apply those.
There is one, for sure.
Yep.
Many agile implementations are considering, for example, to have feature teams. And these feature teams are responsible to create features and put them into some kind of repository. Everything else, from what wants the customer until it is a workable item, and everything after the git push is out of their scope. They are not maintaining something, they are not monitoring something, they are not considering to get direct feedback from the customer, which is part of DevOps in itself. So this must be implemented in one team or in one unit. Which does not mean that this unit is only 5 to 7 whatever people. In a DevOps product team, for example, you can have up to 15 people if it scales well, if it's wide enough, it's whatever.
But it's, I think if you compare a feature team that is considered, I don't know, something between 3 to 10 people maybe in as a unit, and then you have the DevOps team with, I don't know, 20 people, the type of characters that are sitting in each team are vastly different.
Exactly.
In the feature team you have people that, let's consider we develop a web feature, for example, to have a contact form on your website or whatever. And that is, the team is able to do the input box, the button to send something, the API, and then the in-between and stuff like that. And they can help each other, and they all have a similar skill set to support each other. Within a DevOps team, I think the skill set is vastly different, because you need something or somebody that is able to do monitoring, somebody that is able to improve the, I don't know, feature flag thing that I just mentioned, to turn on and off the form on the web page itself. And you have in nature different people that are in that team that are differently spec'd in terms of the skill set that they're bringing to the table. And this is why this in general is not an issue, because we need to achieve these 10 steps in our DevOps team to improve the process properly, and then they can work towards that, and they have a very specific skill set to do that for each feature team.
Yeah.
So I think, while this is a fair argument, I think this is also a necessity that is
I think
absolutely
so.
needed.
Yeah, in the end it's about how it is implemented.
Yeah.
So yes, DevOps and Agile can work together, I think. Haven't seen it properly yet. But you have. Oh, maybe you can give us some insights later if there's a question. But what I get is there are differences, and when you're reading the manifestos or the principles of DevOps or the Scrum Guide, you will find that there are things that are considered in the other side as bad practice. Yeah. One of the principles, for example, in DevOps is that you are having the end in mind. So, which is completely obsolete in Agile because you're not thinking about what can happen in 1 year. Or how to seize the applications. That is not part of the Agile manifesto as far as I understand.
Maybe first, I don't know, you also raised
So
your
I had difficult to understand how it's different. Like you say DevOps versus developers. Like, isn't it just a decision that you make that you don't want to split the work, the kind of work into several teams, put everything in groups that can do everything, be more agile in that respect, because you can fix all your problems yourself, and then whatever working process you apply is a different story, right? So that's more like what I thought when I saw the meeting.
You're talking about cross-functional teams, right?
Yeah, isn't DevOps that?
It is, but Agile not necessarily.
How is it like? I don't get like if you have a team of developers and they do Agile, they have this iterative process of improving the software or developing the software, and you just add some other guys that can do the operational stuff, or maybe some developers enjoy doing operational stuff at the same time, which often is the case that you find some noise and want to fix it right now, right here, because it annoys you so much.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn to do the operational stuff. And how is it like not fitting into this Agile world? Like maybe you have some real examples how this is not fitting. Because you say that the end goal doesn't matter. I think even in like as a developer, only developer, even then, if you look on it for one sprint, you still have the end goal in mind. You will not do something that is completely off-road, but not even in operational, you can see in the future, you don't know what's needed in 1 year.
In operations, for example, you have to consider how to delete something after it was created. Most developers don't even think about how to migrate when I provide an update. In Agile teams.
Yeah, but this is
Because it's not part of the story. I don't have to think about it. In DevOps, this is part of the thought process.
It's like performance, like you have this feature, implement this feature, I don't care about performance, and then 1 year later you notice, all this blocking is blocking everything because it's slowing down. But that can happen, like this is a kind of mindset, I think. That you take care of such things or that you think about such things.
Yeah.
And this can happen with an operator that creates a script that is working for 10 instances but not for 10,000 instances.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you have the problem and people are people and
and DevOps provides principles and ideals to counterpart these ideas of just focusing on my parts. See, I haven't seen anything in the Agile manifesto that forces you to think about how to continuously improve your code.
Because developers do it on their own already.
Or in Scrum, I haven't seen something in Scrum that is telling you have to continuously improve something.
I think you want to add
Except the retrospective where you are improving the process. But not the code.
But somebody would like to
But please ask your question.
answer it because we have him and then we have her. So just for the moderation series. So you would be first.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to add, I think the importance is the collaboration between the two. That essentially Agile gives you a lot of freedom and you do a lot of things, but like I'm a product manager, so I sit in the middle of it a lot of the time, and you just need to make sure the stakeholders know when basically the DevOps is going to give you the structure, it's going to give you the rules, it's going to give you exactly what you need to do, and everybody can go crazy over here, but you just need to make sure that you have communication in the middle, and the two paths are not just going away from each other all the time, because that's
Exactly.
going to get in trouble.
I think so too. It is about focused communication between different knowledge. And
I think
answering the example from Martin fully, because I was able to yet, is you can consider like a construction worker. A construction worker is a construction worker. He will not become a transport driver or even somebody who's driving a ship across the sea. Yeah? And a team can just do as many stuff as the people are there. It's called cognitive load. So you cannot put everything in a team. So the idea of the fully cross-functional full-stack team is an ideal that cannot be reached ever, except everybody is just doing 1% of something that is needed. So you have to specialize. And DevOps is addressing this, that you will have specializations. And team topologies, for example, is considering this regarding communication, how to do focused communication. And in Kanban, this is also very well documented, how to communicate properly with each other.
The actual question was like, how is it different to developers? They specialize as well on some certain things.
DevOps different to developers?
Now how is it like? How is it developer-only teams versus DevOps? Like, because I think the title of the meetup was like DevOps versus Agile, and yeah, how is it like even different to developers Agile versus DevOps Agile? I don't know. What's the difference between those both?
Could you rephrase that? Could you rephrase that question?
Like, what is it? Why was it titled DevOps versus Agile?
Because we needed a hook.
Ah.
And you should have read the description.
It worked.
So we hooked you. Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine.
Okay, I would like to give the word to Claudia because she was also raising her hand.
Would it be okay if I do it in German?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Yes.
He says he would like to have improvement.
Ich bin nicht so oft im Englischen unterwegs und es würde mir immer sehr schwer fallen. Mehreres. Also erstens, ich habe gerade mal nachgeguckt, weil also ich bin hier, weil wir die Diskussion im Team regelmäßig führen, ohne dass ich behaupten würde, dass wir DevOps machen, aber wir sind ein kleines, überschaubares Team, wir haben Design-Team, Development und wir sind auch für unsere Server und fürs Delivery zuständig, deswegen würde ich denken, wir machen zumindest alles. Ich weiß nicht, ob wir es DevOps-konform machen. Genau, depends. Technische Exzellenz und gutes Design steht im agilen Manifest in den Prinzipien. Und immer wenn wir im Team diskutieren, wie verhält sich alles, was wir rund um Wartungen und Dinge tun, die nicht ein Increment sind, die also nicht auf Feature bezogen sind, diskutieren wir, dass es aber Teil dessen ist, dass wir exzellent und gutes Design machen. Insofern würde ich nicht sagen, dass es vom Feature entkoppelt ist, weil das Feature kann nicht gut sein, wenn es super lahm ist. Es ist kein gutes Feature.
Das ist noch nicht fertig.
Ja, genau. Und ich würde immer behaupten, dass man natürlich auch, also ich war noch nicht beim Agile Meetup oft genug vielleicht, aber ich würde sagen, dass man natürlich auch bei der Agilität eine Produktvision hat. Nicht im Klein-Klein, aber man weiß doch, wo die Reise hingeht.
Ich würde gerne die Beantwortung nochmal an Christian.
Yeah, just one remark regarding their basically this notion of an agile team which is only dreaming up features without ever caring may exist. I've been to projects where we were from product management, we were pressured to deliver features only. But it is also part of the team to push back, and basically in our so in our case, though, after a while, I was able. We had several incidents in production. I was using that as an argument. I was using performance, and after a while, we convinced our customer that we also get for each sprint we get a certain budget of, let's say, technical features, technical improvements. So this way, we came out of this trap. That was our. Maybe it's one idea. Maybe if you're in a similar situation, maybe that idea can help you.
Yeah, totally agree. We also had those fights between product owner wanting only seeing the features, and it was not the development team, because you have, as a developer, you have to live in this code base, and you know all the smells everywhere, and you know that at some point they will come back and disturb you. And we always had those fights between fighting for doing the stuff that nobody knows
Okay.
at first.
I'd like to add something here. So I might give this question to you. So what has to be in your product backlog?
Those things as well, like the improvements as well, right?
Everything that is required to deliver
Same.
and develop your product.
And
So,
it's the same when you're applying DevOps. You have to have everything.
so everything, all of your improvements, all of your technical debt, your bugs, your stories, your whatsoever is part of your backlog. When is a new increment born?
In DevOps, as soon as this task snippet is deliverable. That should be the next increment already.
As soon as one of your sprint backlog items reaches a definition of done.
Yeah.
So every time you do something, you have a new increment. So there is nothing that is not part of your increment in a way. So all of your code smells, refactorings whatsoever have to be part of your backlog, and that's why you do a sprint planning, which you're allowed to do for 4 hours in a 4-week sprint. I think most of your sprint plans probably take 15 minutes because it's predefined and you say, okay, let's go. So if it takes longer, it's fine. And typically, if you have all of these things in your backlog, developers can negotiate with the product owner, okay, we have all of this tech that is going to come back at us. So this is one thing. The other thing which we had was its feature teams. This is something you see in some organizations. And why do we have this? Because at the top of the organization we have a CTO, and all of the developers belong to the CTO. And we have a COO, another guy which is highly overpaid, and all of the DevOps guys are in his organization. And nobody wants to say, okay, let's merge these organizations, because one of both would need a new job in that minute. So this is where it comes from, and there you can go with this dual operating system from John Kotter or whatsoever. So the question is, how does your value stream cut through your organization? How do people talk to each other and work with each other?
Finish your thought, please. I've got a question to something you said earlier. The part about the definition of done. How many or how would you place DevOps concerns in the definition of done? Daniel told about some monitoring, performance, migratability. Should this be part of the definition of done,
So,
and how?
What I'm telling my teams is that your definition of done basically captures all your non-functional requirements.
Yeah.
Stability, migratability, not monitoring. Monitoring is a feature. If you want to monitor a service, it's a feature, and you have to build this feature and you have to maintain it. Now this is not definition of done, but performance.
And monitoring in DevOps is not only pinging something if it's alive, it's also gathering feedback, creating surveys, talking to the customer, making polls or whatever. All of this is considered monitoring in DevOps.
But one more thing, but the biggest problem in most organizations is that they lie to themselves. Okay, the code is checked into the repository, the ticket is done. No, it's not. It's not delivered to the customer. And if you're honest to yourself and close tickets only when they're delivered to the customers, you'll see where your value stream actually cuts through your organization and what is beyond development that has to be done with this particular ticket. And then you get to cross-functional teams or to value stream-oriented designs with Kanban or whatsoever. But closing a ticket just because you checked it into your repository and maybe your pull request is green is not actually done.
And I want to add one more to the definition of done and where should it be placed in, for example, DevOps. As far right as possible. So if you're creating a product that you're not deploying, but somebody is only downloading it from your website, the definition of done should be if the thing is deployed on your website so that people can pull maybe the tarball, the install-x or whatever. If you are doing a service, like a software as a service or platform as a service, this includes the deployment to your production infrastructure. It's done when it's deployed to production. Only then.
That's the argument for deploying every change in separate. And thinking about load testing and stability, does it mean I load test every single story for itself?
Depends on your definition of load testing, but load testing a system, an environment, does not need to be done on each change.
You can give you an answer after the session. It's not part of this lesson.
Yeah, so load and performance testing are for me two totally separate things.
I think just with definition of done, the mirror of definition of done is definition of ready. So you have a good definition of ready to start off with. If you have a poor definition of ready, definition of done is problem.
Perfect.
That's equally bad.
Shit in, shit out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we have some more questions.
Maybe we answered a couple of them already.
I could think of that, but I don't want to judge whether this is the case or not. So I saw Claudia, and I have here a question from Claudia Endpunkt. Are you Claudia Endpunkt?
Hi.
But would you read Claudia's question? That would be nice. Just read out. You can read in German. So
I can read it in German, as fast as I can read it in German. Aus meiner Sicht aber ist die schon beantwortet worden, das war die Einstiegsfrage. Ich lese sie trotzdem vor, ich habe den Auftrag. Vermutlich die Gretchenfrage, aber ich bin gespannt auf die Diskussion dazu. Wie lassen sich Hauptaufgaben mit agilen Methoden vereinbaren? Und das war für mich genau das Ding, wenn tatsächlich, also für mich ging es die letzten 10 Minuten genau darum. Ich bin hier. Danke.
So, yeah, maybe we want to ask the two agile writers here. Or waterfall and agile and only agile. How do you handle operational tasks like the customer is calling, something does not work? I cannot reach your website. How is this handled in agile?
Well, I have seen that being handled in multiple ways in multiple companies. I've worked in consulting before, so I've had the pleasure or the pain, depends on how you want to look at it, to see a multitude of domains as well as a multitude of businesses with specific focus from automotive to banking to insurance whatsoever, and they obviously handle it either very poorly or very good in their respective ways, but also with different methods. So having that in agile, I would rather consider it out of scope because you are more focused on the internal stuff with the team and delivering something of value to the customer, taking care of the process, taking care that the team runs well, that they have good planning, that they know what they're doing, that they know what the definition of ready is, what the definition of done is, and the parts that are around it, the delivery process or maybe the support service thing around that is something that is either out of scope or somebody's thinking about it and then taking countermeasures in terms of setting up a process around that and helping with that, dedicating a team to it, dedicating a person to it, or dedicating a queue to it so the developer know, oh, we got some feedback from the customer and we can work that into our cycle, we can fix some bugs, we can work on hot fixes and things like that. So
yeah, but it's not a hotfix. So the server is now down and somebody has to take care. How is this handled in Agile?
As I said, that the implementation of that looks very different.
But is it part of the Agile development teams normally?
I wouldn't consider it as part of the Agile development team. There will be a point in the development process, well, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but there will be a point in the development process where you develop a piece of software, you want to run it somewhere, and either the team has the capability to run it themselves and are able to set something up and deploy something in the cloud, write their own automated script that spins up an instance and then made it publicly available so somebody can look at it or whatever, or they don't have the skills and then they tend to ask and then this problem becomes a problem of somebody else basically, and this is where the disconnect happens and where you either excel or fail. So this is what I meant by either very good implementation of that or very poorly implemented of that particular scenario. But you saw a hand raised. Sorry, was it?
It's fine.
Okay.
But what you're also asking is more like how is the organization structured? There are does everything possible? Does what you are describing sounds more like the development team also happens on the side to take care of the servers. I've also seen there basically one company which has within the company there is split between the development team, operation team, where the ops team is doing the first level support. It can even be operation, even can be outsourced to some cheap country, and which then of course then is asking the developers in broken English what's actually wrong. So first, yeah, the actual question is how's the organization set up. And the second thing is with respect to the developers, because you are pushing for improvements in the code. And that is there a bit of, has the development team time and budget to do it? And also how much annoyed are they by the code? Because the more they are getting their questions regarding operational problems, it's up to them either to answer every question or to improve it that it doesn't happen again.
Indeed. If you want to, I can, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, just...
No, we don't want to.
Okay, good, yeah. I mean, I could give you 2 examples on what I would consider good and what I would consider bad in 2 different companies or projects that I was working on, but if you said, no, we want you do not want to go down that rabbit hole, that's perfectly fine.
I think all of us are working long enough to have seen good and bad examples. Yeah.
You would like to ask?
He raised the hand.
It's going down that road hole, so I'm not sure we want to go there. No, I just wanted to ask because basically what you're suggesting is DevOps, we would do first level support in the team, basically. And that kind of raises the question if you like product developing.
Not in the team necessarily, yeah, but go ahead.
Okay, if you're then like product developing and you have like a higher number of customers at some point, how does this scale?
Exactly. And this is what Christian already said. It's about the company structure. And that is exactly where DevOps is different to, for example, how Scrum is considered, or how Agile is often perceived. I know Agile is different because it's also talking about structuring something. But DevOps in its nature is considered as a cultural approach and not as a methodology that can be applied to only one team. So. And therefore, if you really want to make DevOps, it does not help to, for example, hire a DevOps engineer. That will not work. It is more like applying these DevOps cultural changes to your company and for example, improving the communication between first level, second level, third level support teams so that these teams don't no longer exist as silos, but are having a clear responsibility. And if you're now maybe in the third level and somebody from second level is asking you, hey, can you provide me a 2-page documentation how to recover this hose? You as a third level has to consider, do I really want to invest 2, 3, 4 days to write the documentation that is helping, or should I automate it? Okay. Yeah, so that is more the idea behind it.
Hey, I already have a question who really fits to that. I will relieve you a bit. How do I build the perfect team to make DevOps big in the enterprise? Make DevOps great.
Start with the management.
That's a good idea. Start with the management. That's a good idea. Let them read a couple of books. Really. So I don't think that's a perfect team. Yeah. So.
But one thing that just had one thought there when you mentioned just previously, like how to improve it, how first, second, and so on. Actually, DevOps was mostly born because of lack of communication and lack of cooperation between the different organizations. So in theory, actually, we could keep our existing silos, just make them talk to each other.
Yeah. And principle number 1 is collaboration. So that's principle number 1, collaborate.
Then it's not a silo anymore, so it's, as I said, it's about, think about your value stream.
Yeah.
Where is the customer actually sitting in your value stream? And if you figure out, okay, after development there's also testing and there's, I don't know, package building, whatever, deployment and so on, and then you say, okay, but we're only allowed to close the ticket when it's actually deployed to the customer. And then you say, okay, so we need someone who's able to do the testing and who's able to do the deployment, and then you get the DevOps team.
Yeah. Are there any additional thoughts about that? Otherwise we will continue.
Yeah, I just would like to add, I think DevOps is it's like you say, but it's more for bigger organization company, because if I don't know how it will work without DevOps in a big organization, the collaboration and communication between the teams will be defined, because it will looks like everyone can do whatever task he has, and without caring about the other impacting for other services or maybe monitoring and so on.
When does big or bigger for you start in terms of numbers? 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000?
Like the company, the organization,
Yeah.
for example, my current one is like 1,500, something like this.
And that's big for you, and everything below that would be a small company considered?
No, and for me it's big. No, I don't know how, like for me maybe I can consider more than 500 is big.
Okay. So that's
But-
where you would start with DevOps in your analogy?
No, in my perspective, I think DevOps is good fit from medium to big, for even for 20 IT people, it's okay, why not? Because it's really good that keeps the communication and collaboration between the teams and the members are really working. And I still see that it's okay to work even with Agile and Scrum with this one, and also it's all of them in the first phase of documentation. They say it's flexible, so you can add whatever you want or adapt something. For example, like better code, we have this already in our team, that we have better code session. That's meaning like we don't have 100% sprint, so every sprint is 60% only for feature complete, and 40% that if we have hotfix or problem, if we need to learn, or we can refactor even our code.
Okay.
To answer this, no. You can start doing DevOps completely on your own, alone. But then you have to fulfill a couple of roles. So, yes, but anyway, you can start on your own, because every entrepreneur that is starting his single website, his web shop or whatever, is basically doing DevOps. He's doing everything from developing the website to deploying it to a server, to taking care of the costs, to monitoring that it is available, and he's even doing more sometimes. Yeah? And so therefore you can start, because DevOps is only a couple of ideals and principles, and you can apply them on your own. You will not be very good at it. So, yeah. And the big thing you have to think about is how much cognitive load can one team handle. So if, for example, if you're talking about a big company, very many people are thinking, okay, I have to use Terraform for this, I have to use Ansible for this, Kubernetes for this, JavaScript here, a little bit of Go there, there's a Java application, there's some Ruby, there's some this. If you're having these ton of tools and maybe even super different services for super critical customers, you will have a mega cognitive load in your team. And you cannot have everything in one team, not even considering one person. Yeah? But by reducing, for example, the cognitive load, so saying, okay, we have only one deployment method, we have one standard monitoring tool, we are using only 2 different languages and only 3 frameworks or whatever, you can do DevOps in a very small company if you want.
I think it's even more natural to small companies, because you just don't have too many people, so you can separate roles. So people have to do more than one thing. And if a company is growing, there's typically a reflex to say, okay, so we have many operations guys all over the company. So let's build an operational unit.
Yeah.
And then you get this silo. And for me, transforming big enterprises into really agile organizations is impossible.
Okay.
If you're going to companies like Volkswagen, they're never going to be agile, no matter how hard they try. It's just not in their DNA. It's just not how these organizations are built.
And that's where the problems actually start, because that's why I was asking, when does big start for you? We as humans do have our network of people that also includes private connections and stuff like that, so family members and things like that, where we can remember information. So, for example, if I'm remembering information from my family members in terms of birthdays, if they have pets, if they have cats, if they have allergies or whatever, that's stuff that I do remember for a very small amount of people. And usually that number is roughly around 80 or 100 people. That's what I can do as a human in terms of private connections, work connections, and friends and families and stuff like that. Everything that grows beyond that number, it's difficult to remember that stuff, and that's where silos and anonymities happening. And that's where you build another unit for that. Hey, those are the dudes that take care of your problems when the customer calls. Yeah, that's that unit. And you start to abstract that. And that's also when the problems of, oh, we don't communicate anymore, problems start to happen as well. And that's when those concepts and those methodologies start to fail, or you try to implement them, and then they fail because the company is too big. It's just that we can't remember that much information and can't extract that much information, and then we just refer to them as, oh, those are those dudes, or those are those dudes. And then the buffer builds up in terms of we don't communicate enough anymore, we don't see the problems anymore, we don't see the full value stream that we want to deliver actually to the customer. It's just one small part, one small piece that we're delivering. It's just a knob in a car. Doesn't matter if it fails or not, but if the volume of your radio is always 100% and the knob doesn't work, well, it's a different unit. They should fix it. Right? It's not our problem. And the integration part is not a separate unit, or if you create a separate unit for the integration part, they have zero clue on how to put it together 100 knobs to build the radio in the first place. Or whatever analogy you want to try and use for that, but that's where those kind of things start to fail. That's why usually smaller companies are very good at those particular things. Obviously they have more workload in terms of they need to hop in, hop out of positions because they don't have enough people, but the downside of a bigger organization is obviously its anonymity.
It's a well-known part-time PM.
I would only just shortly ask, we have Martin and Claudia, then you should have nearly the same, so
What
you
I was-
all have to add something to this topic.
Yeah,
or
what I wanted to
yeah.
say was similar to Daniel's comment. I worked in a company with less than 10 people. As developer, there is nobody doing operation stuff. You have to do it yourself. And then you fulfill whatever is needed.
Yeah.
Is it good or?
You learn a lot of new stuff. It's yeah. Be open for other stuff.
I do like
Ich würde nur sagen, wir sind auch gerade in einem kleinen, also wir sind ein kleines Team, wir sind keine Company, wir werden auch nicht wachsen. Insofern sind die Möglichkeiten begrenzt. Manches ist sicher aus der Not herausgeboren. Aber tatsächlich ist es so, dass der eine Mensch, der quasi eher Admin, wie wir es jetzt auch nennen gemacht haben, gegangen ist und ich gesagt habe, ich fände es cool, wenn das ins Team streut, damit wir eben wirklich dem Ideal des wir tragen das Produkt gemeinsam näher kommen. Und aus meiner Sicht hat es ja auch Frustmomente, aber aus meiner Sicht den gigantischen Effekt, dass jeder Mensch, das hatten wir vorhin, und auch erst recht jeder Entwickler und jede Entwicklerin anders tickt, sodass viel mehr Perspektiven auf das Thema kommen. Also je nachdem, welche Perspektive ich auf das Produkt habe ich eine andere Perspektive auf, entweder ich denke viel mehr an die Performance oder an die langfristige Wartbarkeit. Also das bringt, finde ich, das Thema total voran. Ich weiß nicht, ob das Team auch immer so sieht, aber jedes Mal feiere ich es und dann hoffe ich, dass es sich ein bisschen mitfreut. Aber genau, also ich glaube, je kleiner, desto bereichernder kann es auch sein.
And I think you still have to respect that not everybody wants to do everything.
Yeah, we have one
So-
person out.
Yeah.
And we respect it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it's much easier in smaller organizations. I'm working with pretty large projects, and I have one specific anti-pattern that emerges in every large project. The DevOps guys are the guys handling network and servers, and it's pretty normal for them to handle network and servers and do nothing more. And the feature teams check stuff into Git, and they call themselves feature teams in an agile mindset, where they are solely responsible for the whole value stream, except in prod. And the DevOps guys say, yeah, we do DevOps, we do everything with servers, but we don't know our application. And it's just, I get into these projects and I think like, that's not how any of this works.
That's
Not
neither agile nor DevOps.
Yes, and you meet a lot of people, a lot of project managers, product managers, everyone with a manager and a title. They say, that's how it's intended. And I kind of want to know your stance on this.
Okay, educate the product managers.
Sorry, there was a question in there
Yeah.
in terms of, I want to know your stance of in terms of that
Yeah.
process, if you want to call it a process, or that
I
that
think
kind of chaos.
I think
or-
I gathered your response to the setup from your faces already, but maybe you can provide some solutions or some approaches that you would get in, that you would do in such a project.
Fair enough. What is considered a big project for you? When you
100
say
people, 150 people
involved
in one
in that
project.
particular thing? Okay,
Yeah.
good. And-
Usually in 5 or 4 different teams.
Okay. And you work together towards a common goal to deliver something. I don't want to know
Most of
specifically
the
what you.
time.
Okay.
On paper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would start to ask a couple of questions to understand where you're coming from. There is no one fits all solution to those kind of things, obviously. There is. Go ahead.
If there's no way to change your organization, or if you really have to have so many people working on one product and there's no way to slice into domains or subdomains or whatsoever, then you could actually use Kanban. Kanban is a very good method to build value streams across teams. So from end to end, where you see your customer at the end of your value stream, where you fulfill your customer's needs, but you have these teams within your value stream that are highly specialized, like testing teams or operations teams. If there's no way to really do real DevOps, to have these cross-functional teams which maintain microservices or something like this, then you could really start and build a Kanban system.
May I
That's again, that's
cross-functionality?
Experts,
Yeah.
sorry.
Cross-functionality
We keep
is not-
we keep the order. So
It was playing wrong.
Christian, Daniel, Friedrich.
Okay, the first thing which came to mind when you were describing there are different teams and even different organizational units like networking guys, admin guys, whatever. Talk with your project manager and let's consider all of these other tools. Let's just label them as stakeholders. And a stakeholder automatically is part of the project, has a responsibility, and then also your product or your project, they always have to kick off with stakeholder meetings. All of them have to get together, agree on timeline, also agree on some things. What do we do, like risk management, like reactions if this fails, and have in the meantime regular intervals, raise them into stakeholders. That would be my idea.
Yeah.
But then you
Like-
consider them one team, sorry? You consider all of them like one team and all of them stakeholders, right?
No, these can be different teams, no problem. But when you're, let's say, the team leader of them, from each team, one of them should be have the responsibility to be in the role of a stakeholder. And if they accept this role, then they automatically accept responsibility for the overall project.
Oh, okay.
You want to say
Yes,
who
you
is
can.
wrong?
Yes, you can use Kanban, which is completely right. No, you don't need cross-functional teams to apply DevOps. There's in no word in any DevOps principle or ideal it is written that you have to become cross-functional. You can have silos next to each other, but you have to have this value stream, like you are naming it, completely across this, and you need to make it transparent, and you need to own it, and everybody needs to know who owns what. So there can be an operations guy, a single one. And you have to live with the problem that he's sick. Or you can have a cross-functional team if your company is very small and you're only having 5 dudes that are currently working on a software project. That is how DevOps is scaling. And it's part of... DevOps is not a team. It can be 20 teams next to each other doing different things. And it's a lot about collaboration, communication, automation. It's not about having cross-functionality. So that is plain wrong. Otherwise, you're completely right.
No, I mean, what I want to say is, so if you're not able to actually go to this point where every team is able to deliver to the customer, in that case, every team will be cross-functional and do DevOps.
Yeah.
And then you can use Kanban to build a system across your teams.
Well, there is also the option, if you just mentioned it as well, that you can cut your domains basically and have specific things that teams are doing. For example, I was working in a company where we did e-commerce, and they were delivering food basically to your door, right? So you can order your apples, your bananas, whatever, and they deliver it. You just choose a slot, and then they bring it to you. And in that particular company, we cut it into domains, so very specific teams. For example, did do the authentication authorization. There was a public channel. You know, if you want to do something with authorization authentication, you can just write into the Slack channel and ask the team to improve a feature, fix a bug, whatever, you need something, and then they add it to their cycle, and 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, whatever, you can actually see it on the roadmap, and then they will deliver it, and you can at least expect when to use that feature. And we cut basically domains, so there was the authentication authorization, there was one team that is solely responsible for a single part in the web front end, which does the login stuff, and then you obviously have sometimes integration efforts into that going, where you have to talk, where you have to either exchange people between teams to do 4 weeks integration together as a unit to integrate front end and authentication authorization together, and then 2, 3, 4 people were working together on that particular task, and then they went their ways again, and this would happen on a regular basis. So you have specific domains. If you have interaction that is needed and heavily basically needed, then you would put those dudes together into one team. They would work on a very specific thing for a fixed time frame, and then they would go their ways again. But then again, I would need to understand what the issue is and figure out if that's an option or not. But obviously other methodologies would work similar or very well as well to fix those kind of problems.
Okay, wir hatten Martin und dann
I,
nee, sorry, Johanna, du hast vorhin schon mal. Sorry, andersrum. Johanna.
Yeah, my question goes in the direction of communication and collaboration. We just we heard that there is like it is easier to apply DevOps things into smaller groups, and I think for me at least it is because of that, because of collaboration and communication. And I know for teams it is easier to use Scrum because of those artifacts which ensure that they communicate, like in the planning, and they really go to like roots of the problem hopefully in these meetings. And if it is just about principles and like mindset, how do you ensure that this kind of communication and collaboration is within the whole thing?
That's a pretty hard topic. Communication in itself is pretty hard, I think. Since many people are talking differently, but having a look at a small team, yeah, so 6, 7 people sitting together in a room, how do they communicate? So there might be somebody who is very used to working with the databases, and every time somebody has a problem with the database, he's just rolling over his office chair and saying, hey, can you help me with the same? I don't understand it. Yeah, so there is a very focused communication. That also means that in this small team you might not have things like a daily or whatever, because everybody knows each other, they trust each other, and they can work together. In more junior teams where just a bunch of people were thrown together to develop this thing, you might need methodologies, rituals, or whatever that help you. Yeah, this can be a daily, this can be a briefing, this can be a Slack channel, this can be basically everything. But they must learn how to communicate focused with each other and with somebody. What I consider a mandatory thing is to do some planning together with some kind of requirements engineering or product manager or whatever for your iteration, and to do a proper review at the end for the customer. So to showcase what you have done and what you have delivered. At least these two peers, these two stakeholders, to say so, should have a proper communication path. Inside the team, not really necessary. Across teams, it's super complicated. So there are books about it, how to establish team APIs and what is a complicated subsystem team and whatever. So there's lecture about this. And it's hard. And it is really, for me, it is really about something like the stakeholders of the team managers or product managers or agile coaches, whoever is responsible for the team, they need to establish these connections with their peers. So if two teams are currently working together on the same thing, there must be a regular sync. Not with every team member, but with the experts of these two teams. They must know how the complete thing that they are currently building is flowing in the right direction. Or right behind each other if possible.
That's exactly how this e-commerce company that I was talking about fixed that communication issue as well. So they ended up with basically 28 or 29 teams in total. So just to put that into perspective, so that were a lot of teams, and they obviously had a similar amount of product managers or product owners, it depends on how you want to call them. And they were in constant communication basically. They shared a roadmap, they also used methods to prioritize all of the features. So there is weighted shortest job first, for example, as a metric that you can use to abstract and take emotions basically out of the, oh, this is the most important thing, we have to deliver that process basically. And then they weighed the jobs basically and said, well, we want to do this first, or this first, and this first, or that first. And they also had to basically figure out if they have connections or spillovers or leftovers with other teams. And if they had, then they would sit down together, talk about the features, talk about the stuff that needs to be fulfilled, go their ways, plan that, come back, deliver that, put it together, and then ship it.
So kind of a one backlog for all of them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is not necessarily the same thing. Yeah. So, but everybody needs to be aware that the other team is also working on stuff.
Yeah. The one backlog doesn't fix the issue, because if you have one backlog, everybody can write some stuff in, then you work on your stuff and the others work on the other stuff. That the communication is key, and deciding basically having a vote and telling everybody, well, this is the most important feature A, everybody's working on that and we are going towards that goal. And if there are teams that are not contributing to that feature A because they can't, because they don't have to, because they're not needed in that particular area or part of their skill set and their domain that they're taking care of, then they can do some other stuff, obviously. But
to add one more thing, so because if you're using, for example, you're having a company that is producing two different products, then you will also have these two different streams of work that are in there. And they need to be in parallel. But what is very often happening is that companies are deciding, oh, we do have some Java developers here and some Java developers there. Let's put them together and work together on the same thing because they are Java developers. And that is where then the whole flow of work is basically crumbled into one team, and it's the biggest bottleneck. And this can be measured with different methods. Where do you bottleneck our
Sorry, we have Martin, you, and depending on the discussion, I would recommend after that we make a short break, maybe 15 minutes to get some fresh air in here and also to have some rest maybe shortly. And
one more question and then.
Yeah, two. We have Martin and we have you.
So I wanted to come back to Stefan. You said you can use Kanban to break those silos between two different teams, make them work together better. I've not worked in a Kanban environment yet, so I have no idea how like, can you name some examples how this would fix? Applying Kanban fixes those problems?
Yes, but that's too long an answer.
Okay.
But
So
we can have
a
chat afterwards.
Yeah, it's just an observation on, when you want to bring different stakeholders together and you want to have product managers, and then there's, to me, this misconception of you're going to have product managers all over your business, and to me, as my version of product manager, you need to have somebody who's in the middle of the product, who has everybody around themselves, and they are invested in the product. They're not invested in the customer, they're not invested in the profit, they're not invested specifically in tech. Their concern is the product, and their concern is making sure that the product works as well as it can do. And the only reason you can do that is because you have to listen to all of your stakeholders, and it's about defining what is that core set of your stakeholders. And that might go across different levels as well, but that's kind of the important things of the communication and making sure, and it might not be a product manager, whatever that role is in the middle, they have to be somewhat impartial as well.
When you say impartial, that's not necessarily true when you also pair that with they have to be invested into the product. Obviously they are biased towards the product, no?
I mean the operation of the product rather than the success of the product, so making sure that the product works and not. Yeah, that's where a lot of confusion comes. That sometimes there is a misconception that investment in a product is investment in the development of it and the investment of new features, and it's being in the middle.
Yeah, correct. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you for the first part. I didn't thought we will take that long, to be honest. I thought this few questions, 1 hour, we will be finished now. So I just really take what you would like to have. We have everything there, and just make a short break. And I would say we meet each other there, but we will see us here maybe 15 again, so that we also try to get this year done. So
if it's done.
yeah. So just take a break all together, and I guess we will discuss anyway further on. So.
Geht's los.
Ich wusste, dass
Nee,
das
ich glaube, die Luft ist drin. So, welcome back. We have another question. We will continue directly, I would say, that we will manage this. You see, I have some. So, I will continue with what special aspects do you see in the application of agile methods in the area of DevOps?
Again, please.
Oh no,
Sorry.
really? No, I was joking. What special aspects do you see in the application of agile methods in the area of DevOps? I can also show you.
No, just my brain works differently. Sorry.
I have the same problem. These two brain cells, sometimes they disconnect. And for me.
He understands.
So, different aspects of agile methods in DevOps.
In the area of DevOps, right? Special aspects.
I don't get what the special aspects should be.
The question is from Dirk Klaus /Butze. So, if somebody of you says that, me, just have them. If not, we will just come to the next one.
Maybe I can get some extension to it because it reminds me of something. I have several operations teams. They tried working in an agile way, mostly in a Scrum way, to be special. And we discovered that the sprints and the iterations usually clash very hard with the reality of ops, because you have a lot of unplanned work, unplannable work, a lot of interruptions, and that's something that does not go together well with planned increments. So
when you say operations, it's somebody's calling them, telling them to fix stuff, or operations in terms of somebody needs a, I don't know, virtual machine, or somebody needs some hardware set up somewhere, or...
not only that, but operations in general. Keeps the servers running, deploy new applications, keep the applications running, but also direct customer contact.
That makes sense. Yeah, well, I found out that Scrum and 2-week cycles and planning your work for that is probably not your best choice of methodologies. It's probably better to look at the process in general and fix the process that is causing those issues, instead of trying to plan your work in a 2-week cycle and pressing that into that particular 2-week cycle, and then obviously do the firefighting that is needed to keep operations up, because something will happen that is bound to at some point, and then you're just in deep shit. And it's probably better to, as I said, fix the process in general that causes either A, too much tickets, B, too much load on that particular team, and then try to take care of that, so you reduce the workload in general and the firefighting in general. And if then some firefighting happens, probably Kanban is a better choice for that, where you just have an improved work stream and try to deliver something from A to B to make somebody happy. Scrum is probably not the best methodology for that.
No, but the point is really improvement, because it sounds like your team is overloaded. Therefore, it would be rather simple to show it. Like you could break down like how much of that time they should spend with this stuff, how much time they actually spend with some other stuff, and so just present these numbers and then ask for tiny improvement projects. I mean, or ask for more staff, which you don't get.
Since, just to add on this, yes, Scrum might be wrong, but maybe not even necessarily. Anyway, the problem seems more with the types of work that you are currently doing. So you already stated that you are having a lot of unplanned work, and making this transparent first, like Christian explained. How much is unplanned work? How much is business projects? How much is internal projects, etc. Making this transparent should be your first approach, because then you can say, okay, we need to reduce here, or this is coming from there. Then you can fix the reason for this many unplanned work, or for these badly or mediocre described business value works. So I would start there with the types of work, and fixing the flow can be done right afterwards.
Well, by fixing the flow, I mean generally something is causing those issues.
Exactly.
And it could also be that somebody regularly joins the office on every other day and unplugs a cable for 30 minutes, causes chaos, and then plugs it in again.
Exactly.
That is also a fix. Then you never never let that person join the office anymore, or whatever. That's also fixing the flow. Obviously, it's a bad way to fix that thing, but in that particular manner. But you know where I'm going with that. So
yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, but on my experience, you can't avoid this unplanned work because there's so many sources of unplanned work. Is there a security risk in some of your software? You have to do something. Yeah. Is there a system down on update available? You have to do something on this system and so on. So you can't do something with the course that's there. That's always unplanned work. Yeah. You can do something to make it transparent, as you said, or to don't use Scrum for this.
Yeah, plannable, that's the point.
But
so first, security issues. You stated there might be a security issue. Normally, even in the weirdest security considerations, there's a new, very critical zero-day exploit published yesterday. If you're now following, for example, ISO 27001, you have to fix the affected systems in the next 30 days. Which is absolutely plannable. The problem is the security team is sitting on these issues for 3 weeks and then coming around, you need to do it until tomorrow. That's the problem. Yeah? And therefore the problem is the security discovery. When in our security things discovered, do we test our code before publishing it for these security holes? Are we having, for example, a standalone scanner that is scanning our Docker images or whatever on a regular basis? Can we plan these? Are these issues that we find already directly pushed to our backlog? Is our backlog prioritized? Who is doing requirements engineering? These are the questions that arise there for me. But yes, you cannot avoid unplannable work entirely. You can make it plannable or live with the problems that you will have some kind of amount of unplannable work and just live with it and make it work. But then the same team cannot do, for example, business value the entire time in addition to the unplannable work.
It's not an issue that unplannable work occurs in general. Yeah. If it does occur, then the important question that I would ask myself is, how long does it take to fix that? Is it a week or is it 30 seconds? Right? So something comes up, it's 30 seconds, then it's done and dusted, and we're good to go. That's perfect. That's no issue at all. Then that's part of the job, I would say. If it occurs and then I have to investigate, try to figure it out, provide a solution, do that over and over again, and I get 10 tickets and only can resolve 3 tickets per day, that's an issue with the unplannable work. That's where shit starts to pile up, and that's obviously not what we want to have happen. But reducing the time something takes from, it got to my attention basically, and it's done, and I can forget about it again. The time in between is something that I would focus on in operation teams more than the methodology itself.
Yeah.
I don't think that...
The nice thing is if you're using Kanban, it's super transparent that a lot of unplannable work is coming in because it will land in the backlog anyway. And if the top 100 positions in your backlog are unplanned work, then you might have a problem.
Actually, your unplannable work is not really unplannable. So you know that it's there, and it's going to be there always. So you know you have a base load of 20, 30, 40% whatsoever, and you sprint that you have to deal with operational issues, firefighting whatsoever. So you know it's going to happen. So just plan 60% of the work for your sprint. Don't plan 100% and pretend like it's not going to happen. The interesting thing that you need to define is a sprint goal that you want to reach within your sprint. Why are we doing this sprint? And if you're able to reach this in your remaining 50% or in your remaining 60%, everything's fine. But your sprint goal should not be, okay, let's do all the tickets in the backlog.
Well, there's also the argument to be made between effectiveness and efficiency.
Yeah.
It's if I do have a highway and I plug every empty space on that particular highway with a car, it might might be effective in terms of, oh, I used all the space there is, and I put a car in it.
Which is efficient, not effective?
Sorry, yeah, correct. But it's not efficient because nobody moves. We end up with a traffic jam. So that's a principle that in general should apply. That you don't, if you have a 40-day working week, you don't plan 40 hours working week. Sorry, you don't plan that 40 hours. You always reserve some time for extraordinary stuff.
You can even put this into a sprint planning. Like for us, there's always a block or like 8 hours meetings for the next sprint period.
Thanks.
We did try this with 2 or 3 teams.
If we need it, design meeting, then it's blocked, let's work.
Sorry.
We did try to do this in some teams, operational teams do Scrum work and plan only 50% of the capacity for planned work, and the rest is unplanned, and it never worked.
Why not?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to, because the teams only met like 10 to 20% of their goals that they planned. So they set aside 50% of their time and only got like 10% of the goals reached. So it was really, really small what they did. And it happened in multiple teams. What then happened is an easy way. They switched to Kanban. I don't think it got better with reaching the goals, but at least they didn't have to do a sprint every 2 weeks, move all the tickets to the next sprint, and do this like 3 to 4 times, and then maybe.
How big is the team?
Sorry?
How big is the team?
About 5 people.
Okay. Did you try working towards one common goal with all of those 5 people?
Yes.
For example, I don't know, monitor all 400 errors or 4 errors on our webpage. That could be one goal.
Yes, and we said every team member only gets 1 ticket in the whole sprint. Not so it was maybe like 5
tickets.
Yeah, 5 tickets, not 1, but 5. But in the end, we then noticed what's the Mehrwert?
Value.
What's the added value in this process if I just work on 1 ticket, finish it, and then take the next one? I don't need a sprint planning and everything about this, so we just ditched it.
I think Stefan and Severin already told it. One goal. I think a special problem in operations is you have many goals in parallel, and you just do not want to let go of the other goals. I had a presentation, I think a few weeks ago, where somebody said, define your goal. You can't use the word "and."
There's no condition to, it's not, oh, I want to have reporting and I want to have monitoring and, by the way, a little bit of customer communication. That's not how goals work. You should set a goal in terms of, this is one particular topic, small thing that we want to improve upon, that we want to focus on. Do it for 2 weeks or do it for 1 week. It doesn't matter. And you either reach the goal or you reach it 80% or 90% or whatever, and then you extend it for a week. It's not that you have to obey the law of that particular week or 2 week cycle or whatever. You can extend it, but work towards that common goal, pick it as a unit, and then pick the next one. That's probably how I would start within that team, to make small improvements and pick the stuff that is annoying you the most. So the top 10 annoying tickets that are into your queue always or every day, just try to do something or to figure out a small part that resolves half of those tickets. That's your goal. Top priority 1 tickets reduced by half. There you go, and then you can pay into that bucket and try to develop something for that.
It's a simple yes/no question for you. Are you doing Kanban, or have you switched your Jira project to the Kanban view and that's it?
Of course.
Second. Okay, then we should talk afterwards. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this question? Okay, so the next one is, does an agile approach lead to insufficient operational safety?
Can you repeat this, please?
Yes, I can also make vielleicht in German, in Deutsch, führt agiles Vorgehen zu unzureichender Betriebssicherheit?
No.
Next!
I agree. For small teams, absolutely yes. Absolutely. The smaller the team, basically, the more operational security means you have to handle there a lot of things. Actual security, reliability, whatever. And the less people you have in the team, the more each team member has to keep in their mind.
Or you are reducing the cognitive load of the team. If you're only having a 3-people team, you should maybe avoid to host your own solution, build your own firewall, do your own network, etc., and develop your own application. Maybe it's better to just buy something off the shelf from Amazon.
Or we have to learn to use Amazon or some automation configuration management tool.
It doesn't matter. So, let's say your team is very small. Let's say it's only 3 people. But it's part of your definition of done that you're not allowed to incorporate any security issues when you're deploying software. So your development process is going to be very slow, but you're going to build completely secure software.
Yeah. If a customer is fine with it.
That's another question.
Yeah.
But Agile does not introduce any security issues.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the managers that are introducing security.
Was a question from somebody in this room? Or?
This was a question of one of our colleagues who got ill. So,
Okay, no, yeah, fair enough.
So,
Yeah, just wanted to.
Yeah, but now I have a question of someone who added it. Give me your honest opinion on the SAFe framework.
Bullshit.
Yep.
I want to add
It was
utterly
Sebastian,
in
so-
front of bullshit.
Yeah. It's basically a big handbook. You need to get certified. They make money out of it, and it's just, well, at least the good side that you possibly could see or probably should see is that everybody has written the handbook and is obeying to one particular process. But it's exactly that, obeying to that particular process. And it's not always the best or a good thing to just read 1,000 pages and do exactly that. Sometimes it's better to actually use the brain and try to figure out a good solution instead of just doing it by the book. But then again, it's one method. You can get your employees basically coached in that particular framework, and then you know what you're getting. So there is that baseline. You don't have to invest. You don't have to invest in finding the right people and finding out if the cultural fit is correct or not, if you can mesh together, if the team is cross-functional, if we need a cross-functional team. You don't have to put in the work that is actually making product teams good or making companies good that are delivering good products. It's just, oh, we just bought that process, we try to use that process and that gets mediocre results and you have to accept that. If that's fine for you, then it's a good framework. If you want something different, then you probably shouldn't use SAFe.
Thank you.
Other thoughts from the others? Okay.
Does anyone have a good opinion
On what?
on using a framework successfully, maybe?
As a starting point, as a training, let's say to use something like an official training provider is a good starting point to, let's say, to get these ideas into the head of someone, let's say your security guy on the team. However, just following the guidelines, they are so theoretical. I mean, there was one security incident there where a German company got hacked. We cannot explain it. We were following the BSI guidelines, which are based on this in these documents. Yeah, but these guidelines were for Windows Server 2012. Nobody saw the problem.
And yes, it's exactly the same. Bigger frameworks like SAFe, but also BSI something or ISO something or whatever, PCI DSA, or even ITIL, the IT infrastructure library. They are good to get the gist of some words and roles and what others are considering when they are working with you and you're saying, yes, I know ITIL, or SAFe. On the other hand, brain don't exit was mentioned. I think it's super valuable to see what is working, measure it if it's working, and then adopt to it.
What is basically what is good about those bigger frameworks is, if you want to look for something positive, is communication requires the same dictionary. So if I use a word, it requires you to understanding that particular word in a correct way. That's why I'm trying to ask questions. If you refer to the IT guys or the operation guys, what is meant by that? Because it could mean something entirely different in your organization, in your team, in your brain, or that it does in my brain. So we need to match that. That's the time investment that I have to do. If you go for those scaling frameworks and send them to a, I don't know, 4-week thing where they can learn all their stuff, then you're working with the same dictionary. That is something that is good. You're using the same, hopefully, you're using the same words. You know what the meaning is, what the understanding is. That's the good part, obviously. Obeying to that thing could cause issues with brain Excel, but at least you're using the same words. Yes. So you know, oh, the other person understands that exactly as I would, because we went through the same training, right? But you can achieve those things by communicating as well.
Thank you.
You don't need a big framework for that.
So I have one question left, but it's really DevOps focused, I would say. What tools are most commonly used in DevOps to monitor and manage machine learning models? And I don't know, to be honest, whether this fits the topic, but it's here, so have fun.
Whatever suits your team. That's it. Yeah. DevOps does not recommend any tooling. It does not recommend Ansible or Terraform or Prometheus or whatever.
Okay, this one I think wasn't here, so I already watched out which names are here, so I didn't saw it.
I know who has written it.
Yourself?
No. Okay, maybe we can have the related question. There are now security companies, those big security tool providers, which provide their, which advertise their product as AI accelerated security, network scanning, whatever solutions.
Lacework, for example.
Any value on these tools? Any thoughts? Or any experience?
Yeah, both. All of them. So in general, in the past, when it came to security scanning, meaning Zeem log analyzation or CPSM or whatever, you were basically writing rules. If 500 occurs in logs, then alert. Yeah? These were the kind of rules that you needed to write. And then the scanner was running occasionally, every day, every 2 days, every whatever. The same with intrusion detection systems. If something is knocking on port 22, then raise alert. The problem here is that the system is not adaptable to change, except everybody who is implementing something new is also adding these new rules and knows how to explain these, etc., etc. So that is why many large companies now are having security departments that are basically nothing else than this AI approach, but with less intelligence very often. So having now something that learns how your system, your environment works normally, and hopefully in a non-compromised state. Yeah, if you're already compromised, it might not learn a lot about your system, but anyway, if there is a system that learns how your environment works normally under uncompromised circumstances, and then something happens. Yeah? In January, somebody created an account. Not a problem. In February, this account created a new sub-account. No problem. In March, it started to create 20 machines and sending out emails. That's a problem. But only these three things in relation are meaning that there is a problem. Yeah? Creating servers from the administrators that is creating servers all day long or sending a lot of emails is not an issue. But a new account that has never done something else now created 20 servers and is sending out emails, that might be a problem. And this can be easily discovered with, for example, machine learning tools. And I've used 2 of them. They are not the close your eyes and just wait for alerts solution, for sure. But they are really helpful to focus on the more interesting parts of the alerts. Oh, my 2 cents here.
Which one? No, I'm the asking one. Which one?
I was working with Datadog and Lacework, and I know people that are currently working with the other data analyzation platform. I forgot the name. So Datadogs and Lacework are the 2 that I worked with.
So I again look into the round, but if there are not any more questions, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh,
I submitted one question, but it got probably too late, so that you can print it on your. So my understanding is that, like, it is more like an agile-related question. My understanding is that while you apply whatever Scrum kind of thing you do, you also want to improve the process within retros. But like, how can we avoid getting stuck in the process? Does not fit, especially the team members that might not like to speak up in retros. So that's something I see, that there might be, like, there are silent members where no feedback either means everything's fine or nothing at all is fine, and they just do their work and they silently.
Because you mentioned Scrum, that's the job of the Scrum Master, that's why you hire those guys. They have to figure that out. Either they're smart enough to do that and they do their jobs, or yeah, or not.
So I've never had the feeling that the Scrum Master, like, actively, like, it was always expected that the people raise their voice and fix fix the problem from within.
I genuinely feel sorry for that.
Okay.
It shouldn't be like that. So that's why the system is in place. You at least need to have the right people in that position to start figuring that thing out, or try to look for the conversation and try to fix those issues. Because sometimes it's okay to have a chat with 20 people. Sometimes it feels awkward, and sometimes it's not the right for the person that is in that particular team, and then you have to understand those issues as well, and have to figure out a way to maneuver around that. And I'm not trying to say game the system, game the retrospective. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, the issue should come up at some point, and it should be discussed in that particular time frame. Because generally speaking, the retrospective is room for improvement. Doesn't matter where the improvement is coming from. If it's from a one-on-one, if it's from a coffee talk, if it's from a beer that you grab. Maybe you just need to go to some place that is not work to figure out those issues with the persons that are usually silent or the people that are usually silent in the retrospective, and that's where that's a hot potato, a hot topic, but that's where I personally think that a mediocre Scrum Master is different from a good Scrum Master. That those kind of people usually figure that out and try to.
You would notice those people, for example, and then proactively somehow try to leave them.
I would hope I would notice them. Let's put it like that.
I'm one of those persons which also don't like retros too much.
Yeah.
In my opinion, way too formalized.
But you like improvements.
That's the other thing. And that's why, I mean, I'm there in the role of, let's say, lead developer. So I'm throughout this sprint, I'm looking out for stuff. And either the stuff which I see, I speak up immediately, or, you know, as a lead developer, you interact a bit differently with your team members than a Scrum Master.
Yeah.
You're with them 8 hours a day. And also just whenever you notice something, discuss it there over coffee or something, and then put it on the action item, sprint item, whatever list you have. And then it's also getting captured just in a different way.
And that's completely like on the opposite of what I meant. There are those active team members that take care maybe instantly, maybe keep a list of stuff that is annoying and then sort it priority. But there's this opposite side of developers that I also like noticed within the retros and also outside the retros, as far as I got it, never complained. They just do their work and they do a good job. Maybe under conditions that they don't like. and that those are the people that I understood the Scrum Master should somehow figure out how to get inside of them.
Yes and no. Sometimes it's okay to accept that state as well. The important part is you don't have to force yourself upon people. So if they clearly don't want to talk about it, clearly invisible, or figure out at some point that they're invisible, but it's okay for them that it is what it is, and they don't want anything to change, then this is something that you have to respect as well.
Maybe they aren't so invested. Yes, that's also possible. So from my perspective, there is no perfect one fits all. Yeah. So you can anonymize or gather anonymized feedback or whatever. If they want to speak up, they might write something anonymously, maybe. But even then, many people aren't doing this. And you will also have a couple of, so let's say 2 out of 10 or so, that are sitting in the retrospectives and are constantly providing, we need to do this, we need to do this. Maybe because they were talking at the coffee machine with the other guys already and they are bundling all the knowledge. They are forgetting half of it and then the rest is in the retro. So that might be possible. In the end, as long as nobody feels uncomfortable with the process itself or with the improvements itself, there shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. For me personally, at some point, I think it is 8-9 years ago or so, I started to remove these barriers. So, for example, if you're with your family, you are talking in a different way to your family, to your sister, to your brother, to your parents, whatever. And I removed these barriers, so I speak to you and to my colleagues and whomever exactly the same way like I'm talking to my family.
As if they could not fire you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think that's exactly what most of the juniors are missing. They they sit there in fear that the next thing that will happen is someone will...
And we briefly discussed in the break psychological safety and why it is in DevOps engineering one of the highest values that you can achieve. And
we discussed it's not only in DevOps.
Yeah, in manufacturing safety is also very, very high.
And you can tell everyone you're safe, please be open and speak out, you're totally safe, and they will be summoned.
Yeah, and the point is, if the CEO stands in front and is saying, everybody can talk about everything, it does not help. What he needs to do is, yesterday, I totally screwed up. I have done this, and we have lost 1 million due to my error. I learned out of this, that. I take full responsibility.
That creates trust.
That creates trust.
You can still do that within your team as well.
Yes,
sure, on all levels, yeah.
You can have a very trusting team and a very open and honest team, and most of the times, this is by the way true in companies, the talks that happen within the team are most of the times the honest ones, and then everybody is quiet about it because of the fear of getting fired or whatever, or because the leadership, quote unquote, is not environment within a group of 10 people or whatever, or 20 people, or that is roughly the number that I would go. But beyond that, it's probably harder and harder to create that trusting environment unless you really put in the work continuously to do that and try to improve it with particular measures as well, beyond that.
Okay, so anybody else question missing or so? Okay, so thank you very much again, you all. So I think we had really a great discussion. As I said, I would never have imagined that. We still have half an hour, so feel free that we maybe also connect now afterwards, again outside or here like you want. And yeah, but 9:30, I have to say goodbye from the host side. So, but you could continue in front of the door or something.
No, I don't.
Yeah, but it was really nice that you all have been here. So a very, very great thank you. It was so warm outside that you could go swimming or or something, but you have been here. So thank you very much, and I think we will also announce the next Agile meetups, the next DevOps meetup. I know today it was a little bit mixed. Again, for the next month, I think maybe we will have a short summer break, I could imagine, let's see, or a picnic or so. We will keep you updated, but thank you a lot. So yeah, let's meet at the dinner again, at the snack bar. Okay.
Thank you.